Today, my lecture is on elements of communication and their characteristics. Introduction. Agricultural extension represents a major resource for information dissemination, collection and distribution of feedback from the farmers and rural communities. Systematic planning and effective use of appropriate communication methodologies, technologies, skills, and strategies are integral component of extension. Programs which are in turn considered as major cost-effective opportunity to improved agricultural extension performance in both dissemination and feedback activities. The potential for increasing the impact of a technology transfer through appropriate and effective use of communication support has been well demonstrated in our country since the Green Revolution of 1960s. A successful agricultural communication requires a skillful agricultural extension worker who sends a complete message through effectively treated channels to an appropriate audience who responds as desired. Extension workers generally obtain required information from researchers of research institute, university, etc., and treat the information and reach to the audience, the farmers, and receives the feedback and then analyze and transfer back to the researchers. Agricultural extension workers master and marshal innovative information and communication technologies while transferring agricultural technologies and providing agro-advisory services to the farmers. Characteristics of 6 elements. The 6 elements of communication process as derived by J.P. Liggins during 1960s are discussed in brief. The characteristics of each of the elements which may contribute to the success or failure of communication are also furnished below. Number 1, communicator. He is the one who initiates the communication process. An effective communication depends on communication skills, knowledge level, and attitude of the communicator and how he desires to affect his receiver. The credibility of the communicator and organization the individual represents is important for effective communication. Credibility means trustworthiness and competence. Before the audience accepts any message, it will judge whether the communicator and organization the individual represents can be relied upon and is competent enough to give the information. Important characteristics of a good communicator. A good communicator knows the objectives, have them specifically defined. Number 2, the audience, their needs, interests, abilities, and predispositions. Number 3, the message, its content, validity, usefulness, and importance. Number 4, channels that will reach the audience. Number 5, organization and treatment of the message. Number 6, the professional abilities and limitations. The communicator is interested in the audience and its welfare, the message and how it can help people, the results of communication and their evaluation, the communication process, the communication channel, their proper use and limitations, improvement of communication skill. The communicator prepares, number 1, a plan for communication, a teaching plan. Number 2, communication materials and equipments. Number 3, a plan for evaluation of results. The communicator has skill in number 1, selecting messages. Number 2, treating messages. Number 3, expressing messages, verbal and written. Number 4, the selection and the use of channels. Number 5, understanding the audience. Number 6, collecting evidence of results. Number 2, message. A message is what a communicator actually produces for transmission using spoken or written words, photographs, paintings, films, posters, etc. Information which is relevant to particular set of audience constitute the message. Otherwise, for them, this is a noise. A good message should clearly state what to do, how to do, when to do, and what would be the result. To produce desirable changes in human behavior, the message must be motivating. Messages which are relevant, interesting, useful, profitable, credible, and complete are likely to motivate the audience. A good message should be number 1, in line with objective to be attained. Number 2, clear, understandable by the audience. Number 3, in line with the mental, social, economic, and physical capabilities of the audience. Number 4, significant, economically, socially, or aesthetically to the needs, interests, and the values of the audience. 5, specific, no relevant material. Number 6, simply stated, covering few pertinent points at a time. Number 7, accurate, scientifically sound, factual, and current. Number 8, timely, especially current issues. Number 9, supported by factual material covering both sides of the argument. Number 10, appropriate to the channel selected. Number 11, appealing and attractive to the channel selected. Number 12, applicable, can apply recommendation to one's own particular situation. Number 13, adequate, combining principle and practice in effective proportion. And number 14, manageable, can be handled by the communicator and within the limits of time and resources. Number 3, channel. Channel of communication constitute the medium through which information flows from a sender to one or more receivers. Face-to-face, word of mouth is the simplest and yet one of the most widely used and effective means of communication, particularly for the developing countries. As society changes from traditional to the modern, the emphasis shifts from oral to media systems of communication. Because of the large number of audience or receivers of information and because of physical distance of the communicator and the receivers of information, it is necessary to use different media of communication. Even in interpersonal face-to-face, word-of-mouth communication, it becomes necessary to use some aids to make communication more effective. Number 4. Treatment and presentation. Treatment means the way a message is processed so that the information gets across to the audience. The purpose of treatment is to make the message clear, understandable, and realistic to the audience. Presentation means how the message is communicated or placed before the audience. Treatment and the presentation for the message shall depend to a great extent on choice of the channel and the nature of the audience. Treatment and the presentation are creative tasks which have to be tailor-made for its communication function. The task cannot be reduced to a formula or recipe. For example, treatment of a message will be different when it is conveyed in a meeting or published in a folder of broadcast. Similarly, there will be difference in treatment and the presentation of message according to the level of literacy, socioeconomic status, and progressiveness of the audience. The following are the 3 categories of basis useful for bearing treatment and presentation. Matters of general organization. Number 1. Repetition or frequency of mention of ideas and concepts. Number 2. Contrast of ideas. Number 3. Chronological compared to logical and psychological. Number 4. Presenting one side compared to 2 sides of an issue. Number 5. Emotional compared to logical appeals. Number 6. Starting with strong arguments compared to saving them until the end of the presentation. Number 7. Inductive compared to deductive. Number 8. Proceeding from general to the specific and vice versa. Number 9. Explicitly drawing conclusions compared to leaving conclusions implicit for audience to draw. Matters of speaking and acting. Number 1. Limit the scope of presentation to few basic ideas and to the time allotted. Too many ideas at one time may be confusing. Number 2. Be yourself. You can be anyone else. Strive to be clear, not clever. Number 3. Know the facts. Fusiness means sure death to a message. Number 4. Don't read your speech. People have more respect for a communicator who talks to the audience. Number 5. Know the audience. Each audience has its own personality. Be responsive to it. Number 6. Avoid showing superiority. Do not talk or act down to people or over their heads. Never overestimate the knowledge of an audience or underestimate their intelligence. Number 7. Decide on dramatic effect desired. Effective presentation requires sincerity, smoothness, enthusiasm, warmth, flexibility, and appropriate, as in group discussion, panels, interview, etc. Number 8. Use alternative communicators when appropriate, as in group discussion, panels, interviews, etc. Number 9. Remember that audience appeal is a psychological bridge to getting a message delivered. And lastly, number 10. Quit on time. Communicators who stop when they have finished are rewarded by audience goodwill. Matters of symbol variation and devices for representing ideas. Spoken words, written materials, audiovisual aids, etc. belong to this category. Number 5, audience. The audience or receiver of message is the target of communication function. An audience may consist of a single person or a number of persons. It may comprise men, women, and youth. An audience may be formed according to occupation groups such as crop farmers, fruit farmers, dairymen, poultry keepers, fish farmers, homemakers, etc. Audience may also be categorized according to farm size such as marginal, small, medium, or big farmers, or according to whether they belong to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, etc. Communication, to be successful, must be target oriented. The communicator must show the target their needs, interest, resources, facilities, constraints, and even their approximate number and location. The attitude of an audience towards the message largely depends upon who gives what, message through which channel, to what extent the content of the message satisfy their needs and intentions, to what measures the suggestions contained in the message are in line with their pre-held experience and pre-existing preferences, and how far the message is compatible with group norms and values system to which the audience belongs. In case the audience members feel that the communicator is trustworthy, dependable, and find the person communicating the message through the medium of their choice, they are likely to receive the message provided the presentation of the content appear to the audience as interestingly and comprehensively. Audience segmentation. According to Roses, 1995, audience segmentation is a communication strategy that consists of identifying certain sub-audience within a total audience and then conveying a special message to each other of these sub-audiences. This strategy breaks down a heterophilous audience into series of relatively more homophilous sub-audiences in which different communication channels or messages are used with each sub-audience. Number 6, audience response. Response of the audience is the ultimate objective of any communication function. Response of audience to messages received may be in the form of kind of action, mental or physical. Until the desired action results, extension communication does not achieve its most essential objective. The possible kinds of response to message received are almost infinite. The following gives an idea of possible variety in response that may result when a useful message is received by a typical village audience. Number 1, understanding versus knowledge. People usually do not act on facts alone, but only when understanding of facts is gained. Understanding is attained when one is able to attach meaning to the facts, see the relationship of facts to each other and to the problem. Communication must promote understanding. Number 2, acceptance versus rejection. Audience response may be either way. Communication should lead to understanding and acceptance of the idea. Number 3, mental versus physical action. Changes in the minds of the people must always precede changes in action by hands. People should not only understand and accept the message, but should also act on it. Number 4, remembering versus forgetting. When opportunity for action is not immediately available or action is delayed, the message may be forgotten. Transmitting the right message to the right people at the right time is often a crucial factor in successful communication. And number 5, right versus wrong. The goal of communication is to promote desirable action by the audience as specified in the objective. If the response of the audience is in line with the objective, it is assumed to be right action. However, noise may prevent in getting the desired response from the audience. Conclusion. The elements of communication comprises of communicator, message, channel, treatment of message, audience, and audience response. There are many barriers to effective communication. These barriers can arise at the level of a sender, receiver, in the channel of communication, the medium, or at the stage of message comprehension. It can be overcome by thorough and deep knowledge about its objective, purpose, and knowing the background and experience of the audience.